But I think there's also, that negative perception about, black fathers not being in the home, or black fathers don't want to be in the home, or don't care.
Look, the biggest podcast where you can learn them lessons. Line for line where you can learn from different sections. Made it out the mud, come tell your story, blessings. Never know who listening, never know who stressing. Devon gave you a voice, come speak your honest truth. Line for line, go bar for bar, it's up to you. Wanna talk sports, gov, and politics? Wanna talk about where you from and your accomplishments? The Line for Line is really where you need to be. A platform that's really made for folks like you and me. You can find it all no matter what you seek. Whether you calling or you listening, tune in every week.
All right, we're back in another episode of Line for Line. We have a very special segment today. This is for our Black history. Kenosha has a great I can't talk for some reason. Kenosha has great history, and who else to be a better tour guide than the legendary man himself, Brandon Morris. Man, how you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling great. Beautiful Saturday morning. No complaints.
Sir. Yes, sir. Now why you're here. You're here for some Black history. Just take us a little bit about what life was like for you growing up in Kenosha and what our culture was like then. Obviously around basketball for someone like you.
Yep. So growing up in Kenosha on the south side in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, there's a lot of rich history. Mm-hmm. And before I even get to Kenosha, I obviously have to talk about so many families coming from the south, migrating to the north. So my family in particular, coming up from Arkansas, and I guess somebody in our family hearing about there's work up here and they're hiring black folks in the factories, which is America Motors.
Yeah.
Once somebody get a job and then it's, all right, we're going to go back down and get cousin. We're going to go back down and get auntie. We're going to go back down and get big mama. And then eventually everybody just started migrating north because obviously the living and the living wage was just much better here up north. So that's kind of how I think things started for us in Kenosha. And obviously you got neighbors in the south. So if you were my neighbor, I'm going to tell you, look, they hiring us up north. And the treatment when, the 60s or the 50s, 70s, and 80s, the treatment was so much different just for black families.
Very pivotal part.
Hey, let's go up to Kenosha because they hiring black folks up there, and we're making a decent living wage. So I would just pass that word on to you, and then you tell your family, and then now y'all coming up here to check out the scene, and then you getting a job. So a lot of the Lincoln Park neighborhood, that's what it looked like, because when you purchase a home, whether you're renting or you're buying, you're like, man, and the cost of living ain't so bad up here either. They actually letting us buy and own homes. So now I tell you, and then you move up here. So it just kind of keep branching off like that. Now when I look back to my upbringing in the 80s, my grandmother lived here. My grandmother's sister lived around the corner on 15th. We lived on 68th. My great-grandmother, she lived on 14th. And then my auntie, my grandmother's sister, a great auntie, she lived upstairs on 14th. So all of our family was right around this area. And then there were others that moved up from Arkansas who lived on 14th, on 15th, on 16th, on 17th. And that was the community that we knew, we loved. And then there are others who kind of had that same type of story, family living in the South and then coming up to the North, particularly Kenosha. And, again, so much rich history. And I wanted to just bring that moment or that part of history up because that's where we came from, growing up in the South and then coming to the North for many different reasons. So I think we always forget to tell those parts when it comes to Black history, specifically in Kenosha.
Exactly. And just touching back on that, obviously I'm only 28 years old, so I wasn't around back then, but it's like that's when it was a much simpler time for us as a people and culture as well too,
Yeah.
You had the dads in the home. Yeah. You had the dads working, manning the family, and back then one man can take care of the family off of one income.
Yeah.
He goes to work at the factory, has a nice little car, has a house. The wife stays at home, makes sure the kids goes to school and everything like that. But now times are getting more difficult for us as a people as well too, and it's just not like that.
Right.
That close knit circle, family-esque area that you live in as well too.
Right.
What do you think was the reason that like a lot of that just like got taken away?
I think there's so many things that play a role in that. And there's so many systems that play a role in that. When you think about welfare, and how folks benefited from welfare, like in Chicago, I think this is where it started. So don't quote me on this. But you couldn't accept the welfare if you had the man or the father in the home.
Oh wow.
Right? So in order to get that assistance from the state, dad had to leave the house.
Yeah.
For the time being when, welfare or whomever that system or that service came into the home to check on the home. And so if they're saying we're going to show up on Thursday or Friday, Pop's got to leave the crib, right?
It's not funny. It's just funny what you said. Yeah.
He got to leave the crib He got to leave the crib Thursday early morning, right?
It's not funny.
That's real talk. So he got to leave the crib early Thursday morning, and if they're gonna come by on Friday, he got to be gone on Friday too.
Yeah.
So what are the days that they get paid? Sometimes Thursday, sometimes Friday. Right. So that payday is around that time. Okay, you're gonna go to work. Maybe get off work, can't go to the crib. Maybe he's by his brother's house. Wherever he is, he's not in his home.
9 times out of 10, it's the bar as well too.
So that's what I was going to mention too, because you get that payday, and then that just leads to other things, right? So it's the system that kind of created that, father out of the home, and I mean that can snowball into so many things, from drinking to drugs.
Yes, very true.
And then when you're under the influence, you don't make the best decisions, right? So let's say you make a decision that led you into the prison system, in jail. Now you're like almost permanently taken out of the home. And it's just a trickle down effect.
And they're still making money off of you as well too.
So so like I said, that can go on and on and on as to how that happened. But I think there's also, that negative perception about, black fathers not being in the home, or black fathers don't want to be in the home, or don't care about their kids and so on. That's just something that was like a cause and effect of the system that was put in place.
Exactly. Something that's very hard to be broken as well too. So now you got to try to explain that, but then people don't really want to hear that. So it's like a lose-lose if you ask, It's just like, as a black man, I wake up every day and just say, make sure I'm doing my best to contribute to society. Make sure I'm contributing to my family as well too, and making sure my image is positive as well too, just so they can say there are different people out there. There's people who are willing to put in that hard work and break stigmas and break barriers, And that's why I wanted to do this Black History Month project for my podcast, to really give people a part of the culture and things that I go through outside of the podcast and like my day-to-day life as well too,
Yeah.
And that's definitely why I wanted a legend like you on, so we could just talk about the culture of black people and Black Kenosha as well too,
Yeah.
So bringing us back to the history of Kenosha, when was it when you saw the shift of the culture when it comes to basketball in our community and culture?
So ever since I can remember, I was the young lad at Lincoln Park watching a lot of those games that took place. I can remember walking behind my mom, and you remember the very first Jordans, the originals, the first Jordans originals.
Yeah, the ones, right?
The band, yeah,
Yep.
the ones that got banned. My mom had those because she was a baller, but she had them. They used to tie them in a knot and then put them over their shoulders. So I can remember walking down to Lincoln Park behind my mom, dribbling my basketball with her shoes over her strap. I could just remember, I could see it like, me looking up at her shoulder, and she got the Jordans hanging over. Not even thinking 30 years later that it was going to be a big deal with those shoes. So, but I could just remember walking down to the park and seeing those shoes and then watching these different guys play and, you know, the trash talk, the love, it was just a serious vibe, right? And life goes on, you know, I get older and I'm still following these players. And then there was a time where there's a team called the JB Auto men's basketball team. So this was the premier team for me and in our black culture because it had all of the best players playing on that team.
That's awesome.
And it was just so fun to watch those guys play in the different tournaments in the leagues and to follow them around.
Yeah. Because
they were just electrifying. And for me, and I feel like for the culture, they were able to express through basketball what black culture was here in Kenosha. Anybody that talks about, you know, basketball here in Kenosha, you got to bring up JB Auto because they were dominant. I mean, they had some of the best players that came through Kenosha at some point play on that team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that team has been going since probably like 1994. And it was created off of, you know, a couple of different pieces. Like if I joined the team and then I brought my guy with me, and then we started playing, and maybe we weren't winning enough games, and like, dude, let's bring the other fellas on this team because they shouldn't be playing over there. We should all be playing together. So, from what I've heard, that's kind of how that team was created. Chili kind of made that team, which is Vinji Washington, if I got his name correct. He kind of created that team, and then it just branched off, and it eventually became where Tony Moore took it over and just turned it into what we now know as the Kenosha Ballers. But when you talk about that history and in basketball and black culture here in Kenosha, man, I used to watch this team and just want to be like these dudes, specifically the Befford twins.
Oh, look at you knowing twin, Dwayne and them,
Yeah. And everybody mentions, you know, the Walt G's, they mention the Al Steels, Latif Razak, Boski. They mention all those guys, but for me, being a little guy, a little kid, watching them sweeping the floors and doing the scoreboard sometimes, I was always watching the Befford twins because these dudes play defense like crazy. The whole team played defense. They were all about defenses, totally different than it is now where everybody's about offense.
They're looking good.
Right. This team, they specifically play serious defense where they were picking you up 94 feet.
Oh, wow.
And that's where a lot of my game came from, the little bits and pieces of each one of those players. So for me, when I was growing up, I was like, okay, you got to play defense. And if you ever got to see the Twins play in the 90s, I mean, it was just like poetry because they moved so fast. And then they also had kind of like we would call it like tricks or a little bit of showboating, but they did it with class at the same time. And it was just amazing to watch, mesmerizing for me as a youngster to see how fast they were to play defense and to be effective without even having a jumper. I've never seen these guys shoot jumpers ever.
Just straight to the cup?
All layups. But they had players around them that could get them the ball. And that's what made them so special. I'm like, wow, these dudes haven't shot a jumper. They play great defense. And sometimes they would walk away as tournament MVP.
Wow.
Without even shooting a jumper. But they were just phenomenal to watch. And that's when I really fell in love with the black basketball culture here in Kenosha, watching JB, specifically the Befford twins.
Now we know we can't limit it to like who's the best, whatever the case may be. But obviously when it does come to our culture and black history, when it comes to Kenosha basketball, there's obviously the Nick Van Exels of the world that are constantly brought up. Because obviously he was able to go and do it on a larger scale, taking it to the Lakers, Mavericks, so on. Just tell us a little bit about what it was like in that era, being able to be next to someone who would go on to be great without you even knowing that this person was going to be great and impact the culture that you're a part of as well.
Yeah, so there's so much history there too. So my mom and Van Exel's auntie Dee, they are best friends.
Okay.
So as a youngster, I was able to be around Van Exel when he was in college. And I can remember, if I fast forward, I can remember when I don't know, sometime he was playing, I don't know what team he was playing for, but he was like, dude, you used to be the biggest crybaby ever. And I was like, why you say that? He was like, dude, you was always crying. Because he had to babysit us when my mom and Auntie Dee would go to the store or go out or whatever. So he would babysit me, Satara, Bud, and then my sister Simone. Mm-hmm. And he was calling me the biggest crybaby because he got into that car accident and his mouth got sewed up.
Oh, no.
So me as a little kid seeing somebody with a mouth sewed up and he running around chasing you, and, dude, yeah, I used to be crying and running away from this dude. So, but like you said, to think about, somebody that affects the basketball culture just in an amazing way and have put many people in some very great situations, whether they built it up or maybe couldn't make something of those situations. Man, that's some really rich history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you don't even notice it, you don't even take it in, or you don't even take into account, the relationships that someone has with a person, not thinking like, okay, this person is going to be this successful. But then, I get older, graduate from college, playing pro, and then being able to even live with Van Exel for a while down in Houston, and just having these conversations about Kenosha, having the conversations about when we were younger, and him babysitting us, and then talking about basketball and what's the next steps, and who's the best at the crib right now, and all those different types of things. I guess you probably take for granted now that I look back on it, but those were special moments leading all the way up until me being 38 years old right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
my dude. So just tell us a little about pieces of the culture from back then that you use to implement into your coaching strategies and just your day-to-day life now as a person that's part of the culture.
Yeah. So I like to call it School of the Hard Knocks. Following those JB players, one thing that I noticed right away, that these guys played hard every minute and they loved each other. Mm-hmm. It was like a serious brotherhood. I thought all these cats was related all this time. Me, a little fella, seeing them and just seeing how they laugh and joke and challenging each other, just having each other's back. It was just like, wow, I thought all these cats was related, like brothers and cousins and stuff. Mm-hmm. But dang, I lost my train of thought. Your question again? Sorry. I'm reminiscing too much.
It's just how you use bits and pieces of the culture from back then, implementing it into your coaching strategies in your life now.
Yeah. So I really took, just toughness from, that culture in the 90s, and being a defensive first team. And then just being extremely disciplined. Man, getting so many bits and pieces from those different players, even like La Beffer, Lawanzo, excellent
Look at my guy La. That's my dude.
Excellent point guard, lefty. A lot of people don't mention him, but he has so much knowledge about the game. He used to tell me and break it down to me about assist. I didn't even know what assists really were.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was him, and I remember Mark Duckworth, who's from Racine, played at St. Cat's and coached at St. Cat's, got a lot of state championships. But they were just breaking it down to me one day, and I was like maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, I don't know. But they were breaking it down to me about being or dishing out assist and how much that was important, and how you can dominate the game from there. Mm-hmm. So that's what I bring into my coaching nowadays is just being extremely tough player, be defensive minded, and then again love each other, have fun with the game, and figure out how to create a shot for your teammates.
Yes, sir.
Because everybody can score. Anybody can score, right? But how do you create shots for your teammates?
But how can these players do that, though, if all they're showing on Sports Center, whatever the case may be, all that's being talked about on Instagram is the scoring of the basketball, how many shots they shot, how far they can shoot their three-pointers for, how do they get back into the fundamentals of the game if the assists, as you say, those aren't the sexy, pretty stats.
I think it really comes down to being a student of the game. Mm-hmm. When you really think about it, you got to give some credit to Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's hit a lot of threes. But if you take out the three-pointers that he shoots in every game and you see what he does in between the three-point and the basket, it's really special. Mm-hmm. And that's being a student of the game. That's going to take some work. When you talk about some people are saying, oh, he don't handle the ball. This dude got crazy handles. I think he got just as much handles as Kyrie. Mm-hmm. Kyrie might make his more fancier where people will ooh and ah over it, right? But Steph Curry, he got the same type of handles as Kyrie Irving, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So if you look what he does inside the three and to the basket, he affects the game in so many different ways. From the mid-range to just keeping the dribble and then creating the assist. But all of those things, like you said, are not sexy. It's not glorified. It's not what you see. Mm-hmm. So I think what I would tell players that are looking to really take their game to the next level, be a student of the game and maybe nitpick from 1 to 2 to 3 players of what they do really good. Right? Take that part out and look at the other parts of what you don't focus on. When you do that and then you try to add that to your game, I think the growth will be far greater than what you were doing before that.
It'll take a wise one to really see that. Seriously, it'll take a wise one to see that. And people in his ear being able to say, I'm telling you, this is the route. This is the route.
And I think another thing you got to be okay with some really true, authentic, people call it harsh criticism or feedback about you yourself as a player. And then also take that as a challenge for you to get better. A lot of kids, in my opinion, and I guess I'm considered old school now, but a lot of kids I feel like, and maybe it's more so the parents, but they don't like that real assessment, that real talk, that real live, I will critique your game, and it's not taken away from anything you've done. It's not taken away from any parts of your game and what you've been doing well, but it's really just to challenge you to take your game to the next level. Mm-hmm. And folks don't always want to hear that. Folks want to hear that their kids are good, their kids are the best, their kids are Division I, they're going to have a chance to play pro. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the other things, in all honesty. And that's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. Mm-hmm. But a lot of data shows, that I kept anecdotally in my head, that people don't want to hear the other things that should be making them or taking their game to the next level.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, as a person who's still an active coach as well, too, how is it that you plan to be more cultured when it comes to leaving your mark on basketball in such a great city with such a rich history of basketball?
Ooh, so that's extremely difficult because folks only judge you off of wins.
Oh, wow.
They only judge you off of wins. You're only great if you win, and you win at a high level, and you win consistently, which I agree with. And in high school basketball, you as a coach, you get judged strictly off of your wins, right? Because there can be a 4-year stretch where you have a lot of talent come through your school and you can play really well and do well. And everybody can think that that specific coach is a really good coach. He knows what he's doing. 4 years later, that coach cannot have that same talent come through that school and he don't win as much. And then all of a sudden it becomes, man, that coach don't know what he doing. He don't know how to coach. He ain't even letting them players play, and so on. So you talk about leaving my mark as a coach in the history. That's extremely difficult because, again, you only get judged off of your wins. Mm-hmm. So what I just hope is that the players that play for me, whether they get it by the time they get in college or leave out of college or become an adult, is that they figure out that, man, Coach Morris, he challenged us when we were in high school. He always had our best interest at heart, whether I didn't see it as a high school player. And he would always fight for what was best for me as a player or for our team. He wanted us to win, and not just win at basketball, but win at life.
Yes, sir. Now, as we get ready to close out this phenomenal episode, there's a question that has been on my brain as well, too, just knowing the history of fights being at the games back in the day, there being like all-out brawls where games were getting canceled and things like that. As a coach, how is it that you handle your personnel, whether it's your roster and coaches as well too, if things were to get a little bit uneasy at the game, whether it's the crowd or the players on the court?
That's a great question. So obviously, there's no coach that I know of, and I'll even be more personal. For me and my coaching staff, we don't want any of our players to fight ever. It's just not a good look. It does nothing for the game of basketball. It does nothing for that kid as a person. It does nothing for his family. Nobody. We don't condone fighting. We don't promote fighting or anything like that. And I don't think any coaches ever do. So we can only take care of what we can take care of, right? So we can tell our players every single day, every minute of the practice, all throughout, like, no fights, no this, no that. But those players are still going to make decisions on their own when it comes to a particular moment. Mm-hmm. What we hope is that they took everything we said into consideration and refrain from that. That's not always the case. So what we try to do is, one, protect all of our players, and we keep that at the front of everything. The safety of our players are important. One, protect yourself. Two, stay safe. And once we know that all of our players are safe, that's when we feel better about anything else moving forward. The safety of our players is what's most important. And if our players, aren't safe, then, we're going to be uneasy. Mm-hmm. So, fighting is not something that any coach that I can think of want, condone, promote, any of those things. But safety is what's key.
Yes, sir. That being said, we just wrapped up an amazing episode for our Kenosha Black History episode. We appreciate you for coming through, sir.
Appreciate you.
You calling or you listening, tune in every week. Line for line. Oh yeah, I'm going line for line.